Hi, this is Rick Gualtieri, and this is Tales of a Midlist Author. I apologize if it's been several weeks since last I recorded one of these. Um, I've been busy doing what hopefully everybody who watches this series is doing, and that's writing. So it's definitely not been time wasted. In fact, I'm nearing completion of, God, what is it? Maybe my 13th or 14th book. Pretty long novel, but reaching the end of the tunnel. And I figured I'd jump in here, discuss the topic, and also do the obligatory "I'm not dead yet" post. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to people today about was ghostwriting, both from I guess a client and I guess from a contractor and employee or or buyer standpoint. Mainly because there seems to be some kind of some kind of misinterpretation out there amongst new writers about what it is, what it does, what the purpose is of it, and also honestly, there's probably a bit of abuse out there right now in the system. Talk about that a bit. So, what is ghostwriting? Ghostwriting is being hired to write something for somebody else, and being paid for it, obviously, but in return for being paid, you're really getting no attribution for it. So once again, exactly like that, a ghost. So if I hire you to write something, you give it to me, I pay you, you go away, you waive all rights to it, it's mine, I put my name on it. Pretty much pretty much that's the deal. So the good is that in some cases, that can allow people to to increase their output. It can allow people who aren't necessarily good with writing themselves to put out a work. Some people are really good idea people. I mean, it might not even be a book. It might be for an article, a blog post, whatever you may think. But the idea there is, I give you an idea, maybe an outline, maybe it's a detailed outline. You produce the work, and then I kind of take it as my own. Maybe I go through and edit it. Maybe I go through and rewrite it a bit to put my personal spin on it. But that's kind of the general idea. So let's look at it from both ends. As a contractor, why might you want to hire a ghostwriter? Well, as I already said, maybe you are a good writer and you just don't have time to put out so many works, and hey, maybe it makes sense to pay somebody a couple $1,000s, have them write it for you, and then really all you have to do is edit it and put your own spin on it. Once again, maybe you don't really have a talent for writing, but you have awesome ideas, and plenty of people have this. Hey, I have this idea of a story that does this, but you don't have a sense of timing, pacing, character dynamics and stuff. You just know that you have an awesome idea and you'd love to see it there, but you really don't have the ability or the time, or maybe both, to bring it to light. Or in other cases, it might simply be a matter of you want to put out more than you are right now, and and this is a means to an end. So in some cases, you do see some abuse of this, and I think probably more in nonfiction than anywhere. And it's probably wrong of me to call it abuse, but it kind of does feel like it. And that you see people out there really just kind of saying, okay, I have an idea for a self-help book or a nonfiction thing. I'll give you a topic, you write it, I'll put it up there, and I'll send it, and I'll have you do this a couple of weeks. So I'll put up maybe 5,000 word novellas up there. People will buy them. Hey, if I only sell one or two, doesn't matter, because I can churn them out. You are hearing tales of that out there, and I would call it a bit of an abuse of the system, because it's really kind of saturating the system. That being said, once again, I'm hesitant to call it that, because once again, you still do have the dynamic of I paid you to do something, you've done it for me, and there's a legitimate transaction going on there. So it's really kind of hard for me to call it shady, but it just kind of feels like that, especially if you're kind of using it as a bit of a puppy mill for content. But that being said, once again, some people automatically look down upon ghostwriting, and I don't think that's right, because once again, we are talking a legitimate source of writing income and output there. Now, as a writer, why might you want to ghostwrite? Usually the first question I see is, you could just write the story yourself, put it out there onto Kindle, and make money yourself. Well, the natural argument there is, well, maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to be people know your name or even your pen name. Or, probably more importantly, there's a difference between a known quantity and an unknown. putting a book out onto Kindle is an unknown. You might sell 1 million, sure, or you might sell 0. You don't know until you put it out there. Even with a known audience, I can like gauge what I think one of my new books is going to do, but I don't know for certain. The wind might blow one way, I might make a lot less. Wind might blow another, I might make a lot more. So there's that uncertainty. Whereas if I hire somebody and say, okay, I'll crank out this many numbers of this story following your outline for $2,000, half up front, half when I'm done. And once again, the terms are up to you. I'm not here to like discuss what's a good going rate. Well, here's the thing. That's kind of a guaranteed paycheck. In some ways you're betting, saying, well, hey, maybe this will be great, maybe it won't be great, but hey, I know I'm getting a certain amount for it. But also, once again, maybe you need the money. I liken it like stock options. I could take a paycheck, I could take a bonus, that's money in my pocket, or I could gamble on the future a bit with stock options, which may pay off or may not pay off. In a lot of cases, I'd rather have that check up front. Mind you, writing is a little bit different. Everything I've put out there is my own. Just in case anybody's wondering. I just more thought this was an interesting topic to discuss. But that might be the thing. It's like, hey, it's cash on the table, which is kind of hard to turn down. Now, one thing, if you are writing as a ghostwriter, is there's a good chance that at some point you'll probably have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. What that basically means is you're not allowed to talk about it. It's not the same as a non-compete clause. It doesn't say, hey, if I write you a book on gardening and then somebody else wants me to write a book on gardening, I might probably use similar notes, make it different and such. A non-compete clause might be something that's difficult to get a ghostwriter to sign, because essentially you're kind of tying their arms and saying, okay, you can't work for anybody with the same subject. Which, especially if you're a fiction writer, hey, I might write horror for somebody else, but now you're telling me I can't write any horror for anybody. But an NDA is much more common, because it basically says, hey, maybe I wrote your novel for you, but I'm not allowed to tell people I did. I took my money, I handed you the copyright, it's your story. Now my job is to just shut up and move on. And that's pretty common, because let's be honest. Do you want to if you do decide to hire a ghostwriter and the book does really well, chances are you'll want to work with that ghostwriter again. But at the same time, you're not going to want to write with them if they suddenly say, hey, your $1 million seller is actually mine. And that just gets like messy in all sorts of ways. And honestly, that's probably legally actionable at that point, because that person took your money, they said they weren't going to talk about it, and now they are. Well, you probably have a pretty good court case there. And conversely, if you're the one blabbing, you've probably just opened yourself up some decent liability. So those are kind of the thoughts. As for my personal thoughts with ghostwriting, I don't rule out the concept of ghostwriting for somebody else. I've had a few people ask me, but honestly, my schedule is pretty busy. I'm not adverse to the concept of saying, hey, I'll write a blog post for you, or I'll write a book for you, for a set amount of fair pay. I just haven't done it to date. As I said, I write all my books myself, but for certain things, I know a friend of mine has utilized ghostwriters for blog posts. Honestly, that if you want to keep a blog up to date, that doesn't really necessarily strike me as like a bad thing. Personally, I right now opt instead for a guest post. Talk to other writers, say, hey, want to appear on my blog? That's usually also a good way to have content, but I don't really see anything wrong, morally or ethically, with ghostwriting. It is a time-honored tradition. It's been in the industry for a long time, and once again, people have their reasons for doing it or not doing it. So, really, just wanted to touch upon that. Mostly to keep people from being judgmental. It's, oh, you ghostwrite. What's wrong with you? Well, once again, people have their reasons. We all have to find our path in this industry, and my path is not necessarily your path, and vice versa. So, just something to consider. And also, once again, it's hard to make a living as a novel writer. So sometimes you want to open yourself up and make sure that you have potential alternate income streams. And ghostwriting can be that. Especially if you are a fast writer, you do have the time, and you do need that that steady check, as opposed to the uncertainty of please be a bestseller, please be a bestseller. Anyway, this is a short one. Once again, I just kind of wanted to jump in with a topic I thought was interesting. Hopefully, I'll be recording another one of these a little sooner than the last one. But once again, at the end of the day, we're writers. If we come down to it and say, hey, I could be recording videos, I could be doing blog posts, or I could be writing my next novel, always opt on that writing. Something to consider. Anyway, my name is Rick Gualtieri, and this is another Tales of a Midlist Author, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks.